YouTube and content creation in general is so saturated. So it generally makes you wonder why anyone would be picking it up at this time. But somehow I decided to do that. But I promise you, I have some really, really good reasons. These are not just reasons I pulled from the air. So I've had the opportunity to work with many brands to create for them short form content for TikTok and Instagram. I've worked with multiple small brands, and then I think the biggest brand I've worked with is Amazon. So I've kind of been creating content for some time, but it wasn't content for myself. So I do have some experience with content. So these benefits are actually benefits that I saw I had benefited from just from creating content for other brands. And then I figured I would probably experience those benefits on a much larger scale if I was doing content under my own name. So what I do at the moment is something called UGC, user generated content, whereby, when you're scrolling through your feed and you find an advert for, I don't know, a lotion, there is someone applying that lotion and explaining the advert. Maybe I'll put an example here.
Here's how you can start selling a product online with Shopify.
So that person is called a UGC creator. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I've been doing. So brands would reach out to me and I would make the video and I would send it to them and they can use it for adverts or to post on their own pages. And I started this just as something to do on the side. And it's very expensive, just for fun money. I like to do side things like this so I can use it to, not always, but just things that I wouldn't be as comfortable to spend my money on. Yeah, so that was the story behind that. But since then, I want to say I did hit a ceiling. So in a way, that is number one for me to start to do this. And I thought, hey, what are the other UGC creators like? Where are their parts heading after they are finished with UGC? And that is when I realized I think creating content under my own name might be the next step. But basically, throughout this journey, I've enjoyed so many benefits that I did not expect, that I thought, wow, imagine if this is this good, how much better it would be if I was doing it under my own name. Like, I have ownership of the content right now. The benefit is I get paid immediately. I don't say it doesn't matter how well that content performs, but way more, in fact, other things matter more with regard to how a video performs, whether it's for ads or organic, than the creator herself. Yeah, but basically now I thought if I had more ownership of what I'm creating, it should even propel this much further and make it even more appealing. Reason number one is basically a concept that went viral sometime last year, 2025, I would create more than you consume. I got to a point where I was spending an unhealthy amount of time on TikTok particularly. Reels are boring, so that's why I just spend any time on there. But if they were interesting, I'd probably spend some time with there as well. Or maybe it's just the TikTok algorithm is much, much more advanced than the Instagram algorithm. So I was just kind of pulled more to TikTok. And I started to realize that I was so much of a consumer, and that went even beyond media. I mean, think about it. Throughout the day, you watch movies, you eat food, you wear clothes, you spend time on TikTok, you read newspapers, you read books. Even reading books is still a type of consumption. And it was not something specific to social media, but I was just not happy with the fact that my identity was so wrapped into being a consumer. And this also happened at a point where I was looking for a hobby that actually was not consumption. This is a bit of a controversial take, but I got to the point where I did not consider consuming a hobby anymore. I think because I was just doing too much of it. Of course, you can still enjoy whatever it is that you enjoy. I still read books, I still use TikTok, I still use Instagram. What I mean is that there was a point in my life where if I had to define who I was, a lot of it would be consumption. Oh, I love to read nonfiction books. Oh, I love to drink water in the morning, which isn't a bad thing, and that's the point I'm trying to make. But I felt like I was just taking out of the world and I was not putting anything back in. Not that I'm some kind of matter for starting a YouTube channel, but basically I was just in and there was no outlet for all those things that I was consuming. Yeah, but I have to be honest, it was definitely more specific to content. Now you might ask yourself, well, if you were doing that UGC thing, it's kind of creative. Why did you still feel the need to do this? And the reason for that is that when I do UGC, many times I'll get a script, something like this, and they tell me what to do. Sometimes they give me a shot-by-shot list of exactly what to do. Also, creativity to sell something is not the same as just normal creativity. I'm not making any money on these videos. I don't know if I'll ever will. And then I also turn some of these videos into essays, which are definitely not going to make me rich. So it just felt like I needed a creative outlet that did not have that restriction, that was not boxed in, but also needed something that maybe was not attached to an obvious outcome, just something to create for the sake of creating. So of course there are other ways to create. For example, running a marathon is not creation in the traditional sense, but you are definitely giving back, first of all, directly, hoping you're running a marathon for charity, but you are also doing something that is taking energy out of you and putting it out in the world, rather than just consuming everyone's energy and taking it all in and bottling it up in there. No wonder we are all so depressed and sad. Number 2 is a little out there, but I had a friend, she'll probably watch this, and one time in our teenage years, I don't know, 15 or 16, we realized that adults were just miserable. And we always wondered, we just noticed it mostly through our teachers, that most of them were just obviously unhappy with their lives. A lot of them will tell us directly, but some of them will just take it out on us. I mean, if you went to Catholic school, I'm sure you can relate. But so it just piqued my interest in just analyzing the different adults in my life since I was a child. And at that moment, I didn't realize how useful it would be. But like, I tried to figure out the adults who didn't care about, I don't know, first of all, they didn't waste time comparing themselves to others. They just kind of did their own thing. And in a way, everyone admired them. I'm talking about, these were our favorite teachers in high school. They were the teachers who were not punishing us for being late. They were teachers giving us a hard time for sleeping in class. And I just was always trying to see what the difference is. At first, I thought it was just a nature thing, or that's just how they were, until I realized they were always people who had a thing outside work. Now, thing is really vague, but it can range from a hobby, it can range from even a separate career, but basically something that gives them happiness and joy outside work. Most people live, work, eat, sleep, and that is a miserable existence. I can't even sugarcoat that. I realized many of the people in my life that I looked at, they were the people who did pottery on the weekends, who made art. They were the people. Now, I'm not sure if it's a cause-effect relationship. Maybe these people are just really cool and then they end up doing these things. But I think there's some science there, because since I started to create, I've felt that same level of freedom. And I'm going to talk about career next, actually. It's the next point after this, so I'll hint more on this. I've felt like there was something building and bottling up in me. And since I started to put it out through this work, I just feel so, I'm not going to say fulfilled, but I feel more complete. There was an element of my brain that was sitting dormant and was driving the rest of my brain crazy, and then that crazy has all been shut down. Now, I think personally, when we leave school and go into work, we are very hopeful and excited that we're going to work on some really important things. And then what happens really is when you start to work, you realize you actually don't use your brain that much. And even if you do use your brain, if someone gave you a math exam right now, you will be using your brain, but using your brain to perform the task that is in front of you versus using your brain to create the task, to give direction, to have that sense of ownership towards what you're creating, I think that's a completely different thing. So that is my theory here. When you're working at work, you are getting tired, but it's a I don't want to say it's a bad part, because obviously work, your job pays your bills, so I don't want to have an anti-work sentiment. What I mean is that the modern corporate job, unless you have some level of seniority or you can run the show and you have some say in what happens there, it does not fulfill that part of you that went to school for 15, 17 years to be able to use your brain to come up with concepts and act on them and then reiterate thereafter. It's just you get there, they tell you what to do, you do it, and you go home. It exhausts you, but it doesn't exhaust you in a good way. Like, you can be tired from dancing or you can be tired from running from a kidnapper. You're tired in both instances. The feeling is not the same. That's what I mean. So that is my theory, but if you have a different theory, I'm very happy to hear it. So next point why I'll studying YouTube is career. I work in digital marketing, and as you might know if you've not been living under a rock, AI is just demolishing our industry, if I'm being honest. It just came in and changed everything. This happened around 3 years ago. In fact, I worked always as a freelance writer, like on the side, like I took on clients' because I have a nutrition degree, so I was doing health writing, basically all those articles you find, oh, what are the benefits of vitamin D, how much vitamin D should I take? Someone has to write those, and of course if you're reading from a reputable source, they prefer someone who has a background in that field. So I wrote a lot of wellness articles because I have 2 degrees in nutrition, a bachelor's and a master's. AI came in 3 years ago, and thankfully I sensed this, which is why I started doing the video thing, and I left writing immediately. And of course most jobs in writing disappeared because now AI can write. To be honest, it really can. It may not write something from scratch, but it can take a lot of the heavy lifting out of it. An article used to take me about 4 hours to write, and if I were to do that same article, I would maybe take an hour to do research, and then AI would flesh out the words, like would fill in the words for me while I give it all the science. As you can imagine, that was non-sustainable, and I clocked that immediately, thankfully. And like, yeah, interestingly, now that I started to do videos, AI is also coming for video, but I don't know, who knows when that is actually going to take over. When I looked at the situation, I saw the future. I'm not going to bore you with so much digital marketing talk, but this is relevant to most industries, especially if you're running a business. Marketing is going to change so fast, but that one type of media that builds so much connection and trust is medium to long form content. So I think we're going to get to a point where YouTube is the only platform you go to, and you are like 95% sure that the channel you're watching, well, if there is a person, obviously the voiceover videos, even many of them are AI, what's the point? But if you see a vlog of someone maybe going to, I don't know, Saint-Tropez or going to Milan or whatever, if it was AI, it would be incredibly difficult to make an AI video like that, right? So this is not just about vlogging. If you have a brand, for example, like Ninja, I'm not sure if they have a YouTube channel, but if they don't, in the next 5 years, YouTube is the one place where they can have content that people are going to be able to trust and don't wonder if it's AI. What's crazy now is that people who are posting actual human content are getting comments like, is this AI? Is this AI? So we're already at that point where you watch something and you cannot trust that it is human or AI. I thought it was more worrying for people to think AI was human, but it's way more scary that people think human content is AI, which means in their eyes, AI is that good and indistinguishable, which is absolutely crazy. Anyway, so that's why I started with this, and now this applies to all industries, not just digital marketing. Well, digital industries, but not just digital marketing. Well, maybe actually it applies to everything. Yeah, I don't know if it applies and good. If it doesn't, just leave it here. But we're going to move to a more portfolio-based career system in the near future, just because I think work is going to be less straightforward. Yeah, for example, if someone has been doing, I'll just use what I know, maybe let me try PR, I don't know. If someone has been doing PR for 30 years, but they've never done social media PR, they might not be of use to you if you're doing PR for influencers or something like that. So you might have someone with 5 years experience, but that 5 years of experience is specifically in social media PR. You get what I'm saying? Right now, even in the work that I do, doing this kind of thing is already helping me inform my decisions at work and inform my input that I give to my bosses, because I know firsthand what it means and what it takes to make these things work. I can share that insight with my manager, and sometimes take it on. Of course, sometimes things are not possible for a large company like ours. Before hiring someone, it was based on the length of experience, but I fear with how fast things are moving these days that I think we already are moving in a direction where you have a more portfolio based resume. So it's not just about, oh, I worked at Google for 30, is Google even 30 years old? No, I think it turned 21 when the founders left. I'll check. And if I worked at, I don't know, IBM for 30 years, and that was enough because you were doing the same things and nothing was changing much. But now with so much work being digital, if you say, oh, hey, I heard you are expanding your water bottle line into Europe. I was at this company and we brought their water bottles to Germany or Switzerland or whatever, and we took them from this much to this much. Even if that is the only experience you might have for the job they're hiring, you are a better fit for that role than the person who is more of a generalist. Anyway, yeah, so that's why I started this, because I can eventually, maybe after a year, add it to my portfolio and say, hey, if you're looking for ways to grow, hopefully it grows, because if it's still stuck at 5 subscribers, then I don't know how that's gonna work out. Yeah. Point number 4 is just not one point, but it's going to be multiple points. But basically, initially, I had always admired people who were able to create and put their work out there.
but I was always naturally concerned and scared of what are people gonna think, like people gonna judge me, and then people gonna see like my rough ideas. But I don't know if it's just maturity, I don't know if it's the years. I sound like I'm so old. I'm not that, I'm old, but I'm not that old. But anyway, I'm just at a point where, one, I'm not afraid to be seen trying, because initially I don't think I'm someone who has ever truly cared what people think about me. But the reality was, I thought I was that way, but that was only if people were only seeing me succeed. You understand? Yeah. But I was not comfortable with people seeing me flop. But the thing about creating content in public, once you flop once and your entire family and all your friends see that, you start to realize that it takes away nothing from you to be seen trying and to fail. For the way content works is this: you put out so much content, like a video every day, that eventually you get exposure therapy and you just get over yourself and stop worrying about what people are going to think in case you flop, because you're flopping all the time. So it's fine. My videos only are getting 30 views and I genuinely do not give a shit, because all that matters to me is that I'm trying, and I'm trying as hard as I can. Possibly I could try harder, but with the resources I have, this is as hard as I can push, and I feel like I'm doing my part. So the rest is up to the universe to figure out how it can reward me for doing this work, but that is not up to me and that is not my fault. And additionally, to add to this point, I want to look back to my life and not have any regrets. I don't have any regrets in my life, very few, like two. I realized that if I was 65 and I was doing God knows what, I know I would regret not doing this. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. No pressure to make money, not pressure to obviously get famous. Everyone is an influencer now, but I'm gonna do it, and whatever happens. And then when I look back in 20 years, I'm already thinking, wow, I'm glad I tried that, and I don't have to have questions of what ifs and wonder what would have happened, because I don't think there's anything more painful than a what if, because it has absolutely no solution, no antidote. There is no way to take back time and see what you would have done in a specific situation. The next point that is actually a little bit unexpected that I saw when I started to do content is networking. From my accent, I'm sure you can tell that I didn't grow up in the UK, but no, not bad. I need friends. Like, I need a new network. I need new people in the city that I can do things with. So I tried to get into tennis last year, which I've been doing, and I've met some really amazing people through that. So I'm really happy that I'm starting to build my network. But what surprised me more is that through TikTok, I started to meet other people who are doing TikTok, and then I would ask them to lunch, then I would ask them to, whether you want or not, I'm going to do a video on how to make friends as an adult, the things that have worked for me since I moved to a new country, a new city. And I feel like for a shy person, I've done fairly well. Then I'm going out to dinner on Sunday with these amazing girls I met at an event. So I really think that I don't have a handle on it, because obviously I'm still trying, but I feel like I have first-hand experience and success in the area that I can offer some insight. Anyway, yeah, so I started to go out with people who are doing TikTok, but not even just editors. Like, someone would hit you up and say, hey, do you want to have a 1-hour call, talk about editing? Yeah, I remember I went to coffee with this amazing lady. She runs a community called The Lust Foray. You should check it out if you love all things chic and luxury. She's amazing for that. Her community is amazing for that, because I've made 2 friend groups there. Yeah, which is almost unheard of, because I've done other events and didn't work out. Anyway, she hit me up and we went to coffee, and all that was thanks to TikTok. I've managed to talk to people you would never I would never have managed to do because of TikTok. And I was not even doing TikTok as an influencer, I was doing TikTok as a UGC creator, and it still made a massive difference to how I network and how I'm making connections with people. And for some reason, when you meet someone through something like this, you usually have a common ground, because all the connections I made through TikTok, almost all, not all of them, are still withstanding. Because usually when you go out to eat, there's some intention behind that meal besides just hanging out together. No, that's wrong. Ideally, actually, when you go out to eat, I would prefer you are just chilling instead of thinking about career and stuff. What I mean is that if someone, for example, hits you up and they're like, hey, I need some help with this, when you go, it creates a basis for you to have some common ground, so you can talk about things, you can discuss whatever it is that has brought you together, whether that's fitness, whether that's creating, whether that's career. And you're not just pulling topics out of the air. So this helps drive continuity from where your conversation stopped. For example, 3 months later, if they posted something, it would be natural for you to ask and say, hey, how has it been going? Is it as you expected? Do you need more help, or can you offer me some help? And it's just much more tangible as a relationship because there is common ground, there is something for you to jump off of to build that relationship. Yeah. So if you're not weird and you live in London and you want to get dinner sometime, I'm happy to do that. Preferably just girl, because every time I try to be friends with guys, they always want something else. But if you're a guy and weird, you can be weird, but like acceptable types of weird. I don't know, like just, you know what I'm trying to say. Just don't try anything silly. Yeah, but I don't know, maybe I should just stick to going out with girls. Anyway, you know what? If you're a guy and you have either a plane, a boat, or a holiday home, you can call me out to dinner, but still, I'm in a relationship, so as a friend. You know what? If you're a couple in London, call me out with my partner and we'll come and have a double date, because I'm not trying to get into a compromising situation just because I want more friends. Finally, the reason I started YouTube, but it's very... honestly, I don't know what I'll describe this as, but I'm at that age where basically people are starting to wonder, when shall I put a ring on it and when shall I procreate? Let's put it that way. I don't feel any pressure to do any of those things. Like I said before, I'm not someone who has always valued opinions to actually maybe a dangerous extent, because sometimes there's some things you can only learn through experience. So if you have the opportunity to learn from someone who has lived that life before, I think you should definitely take it. But on the plus side also, I'm lucky because I'm simply unbothered by what other people are up to. I just kind of live my own life according to my own rules that I make up. I do have a lot of rules. Maybe one day I'll get into that. But for example, if I wake up, glass of water every day, 365 days of the year, no compromise. But I feel like that's a bit normal. But I have many more. For example, if I'm counting workouts and I'm confused between two numbers, like 15 and 16, I always pick the lower number because there is no way I'm doing 16 push-ups and mistaking them for 15. But it's just things like that. Anyway, so there are rules of my life, but I make them. I decide what is important to me, and I decide where my focus and priorities are going to be for my entire life. So I'm lucky in that element. But of course, first of all, I have a biological clock. There is no denying that, even though we now know that sperm declines in quality far more than eggs. But menopause has to come at some point. And yeah, but when I think about that, no offense to the people who have chosen to do this in their 20s, but first of all, I never wanted to do any of those things in my 20s because I always felt 1 decade is not even enough to get to know myself. But additionally, I realized that if I decided to get married right now or have a child, even though I have 2 degrees, I can't help but feel like that would be the most significant step I've taken in my life. Now, listen well, don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. My point is that, how do I put this? My point is that, so what I'm trying to say is, if this is such a sad scenario, but if maybe you had a really rough upbringing and maybe you didn't have support from your parents, if you graduated university, that would be something that sorry, I'm getting a bit oily. That would be something that is a miracle, like you've outdone the odds and managed to achieve something that was unexpected for the resources that you have. But if I'm being honest, guys, I came from a supportive family. They always did the most to take me to the best schools. I've been well taken care of. I've been well supported throughout my whole life, not just financially, but also emotionally. So to graduate, undergraduate, and my master's as well, not that it is not an achievement. My point is, there was no reason for me to fail to do so because I had the foundation to do that. So I just felt like if I moved on from that step of my life and then moved into marriage and kids, I would have kind of feel like I would have gone from being my father's daughter to being someone's wife. So I feel like I need a gap in between there to create something. It doesn't have to be big, honestly, even if it's just a book club. I just need to create. I don't want to overuse the word create, but I just need to put out something of substance into the world before I commit to that life. And I try to maybe find ways and different things I could do and whatever. And I realized that since I was already thinking about doing this, it could be my thing. Honestly, if I managed to post on this channel maybe 3 times a month for a year, it will be so important to me, and I don't even care if there's growth from it. It will be probably the thing I would be most proud of, because I have no pressure to do it. I have no support to do it. I'm doing everything myself. So to be able to pull that off on top of a full-time job, on top of staying fit, on top of hair, skin, everything, will make me so proud. And I just can't possibly fathom. I'm not judging the people who have, but I just cannot imagine my life just at this point moving into motherhood and wifehood. In a way, those privileges that I had growing up, I feel like I was blessed with those, and I need to give back to the world a little bit in some way. This is making me a bit emotional, but yeah, again, I'm not judging anyone, but I need something. I need to do something with my life. I need to make use of the resources, the mental, the physical, these gadgets that I have, and create something for the world, instead of taking from my teachers, taking from my parents, taking from the community, taking from the government, even though I do pay taxes, so they take from me as well, and then straight from that creating another life for it to start taking from the world as well. I just feel like I need to give a little bit more before I do create that other life to start taking from society as well. Anyway, this is it for today's video. Next video is probably going to be something more fun, actually. I think I'm going to do a video on making summer plans in winter, because you know how they say summer bodies are built in winter, so I apply that to summer plans. Epic summers are built in winter, so I'm starting to plan for summer 2026, so I'm not stuck in my bed wondering why I don't have any memories. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and see you next week with a new video. Yeah.